The rain came without warning, turning the country road into a river of mud that swallowed Tamsin's boots with every step. She clutched her worn traveling cloak tighter, the thin wool already soaked through, and her small valise growing heavier by the minute. 3 more miles to Hartwell Village. 3 more miles to the governess position that represented her last chance at respectability. Lightning split the sky, illuminating twisted wreckage ahead. Tamsin froze, blinking rain from her eyes. A carriage lay on its side in the ditch, one wheel still spinning lazily in the downpour. The horses were gone, probably bolted in terror. Scattered luggage dotted the muddy slope like fallen soldiers. And there, crumpled against a shattered door, was a man. She was running before she could think, her valise abandoned in the road, her useless bonnet flying from her head. The mud sucked at her boots, tried to drag her down, but she fought through until she reached him. He was breathing. That was the first thing she noticed, the shallow rise and fall of his chest beneath a coat that probably cost more than her family's annual income. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, a gash above his left eyebrow bleeding freely, mixing with the rain. "Sir." She shook him gently, then harder when he didn't respond. "Sir, can you hear me?" A groan. His eyelids fluttered. "You've been in an accident." She was already examining the wound, her fingers surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. Years of helping her mother tend to sick neighbors had given her some skill, though nothing had prepared her for this. His eyes opened. They were gray, the color of storm clouds, and for a moment held nothing but confusion. Then they focused on her face, and something changed. Awareness, assessment, a flicker she couldn't name. "The horses," he rasped. "My driver." "Gone. The horses bolted. I haven't seen your driver." Tamsin glanced around. "Were you traveling alone otherwise?" "Yes." He tried to sit up and immediately grimaced, his hand going to his ribs. "Don't." She pressed him back firmly. "You may have broken something. Moving could make it worse. I can't simply lie here in a ditch." His voice was stronger now, irritated, accustomed to command. "The rain is getting worse." He wasn't wrong. The downpour had intensified, turning the ditch into a stream already lapping at their feet. "There's an old mill house half a mile back," Tamsin said. "Can you stand if I help you?" Those gray eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "You're not afraid? A woman alone, helping a strange man in the middle of nowhere?" "I'm more afraid of watching you drown in a ditch, sir. My conscience couldn't bear it." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his lips. Very practical. Getting him upright was a struggle. He was taller than she'd realized, well over 6 feet. And though he tried to bear his own weight, he leaned heavily against her as they staggered through the mud. His arm draped across her shoulders, her arm wrapped around his waist, intimate as lovers despite being strangers. The irony wasn't lost on her. 23 years of careful propriety, of guarding her reputation like the precious commodity it was for a gentleman's daughter without fortune. And here she was, pressed against a man she'd never met. "What's your name?" he asked as they fought their way up the slope. "Tamsin. Tamsin Allerdale." "And what were you doing on this road in a storm, Tamsin Allerdale?" "Walking to my future, or what's left of it." The mill house appeared through the rain like a gift from Providence, its stone walls still solid, despite years of abandonment. Inside was cold, but dry. Tamsin helped the stranger to a wooden bench, then set about searching for anything useful. She found old sacking, a rusted tinderbox with dry matches, and remnants of stacked wood. "You're remarkably competent," the stranger observed, watching her coax a small fire to life. "Desperation breeds competency, sir." She didn't look at him. "Now, let me see that wound." She cleaned the gash with rainwater and strips torn from her petticoat. He sat still throughout, those eyes never leaving her face. "You have gentle hands," he said quietly. "I have practical hands. There's a difference." "Is there?" Their eyes met, and for a moment, the storm seemed very far away. Tamsin became acutely aware of how close she was to him, of the firelight playing across his features, of the impropriety of their situation. "The rain should stop by morning," she said briskly, stepping back. "You should rest. And you? Someone needs to watch for your driver." His face shifted, something almost like guilt crossing his features. "Miss Allerdale, I should tell you." The door crashed open. Tamsin whirled, her heart slamming against her ribs. 3 figures stood silhouetted against the storm, lanterns raised. Behind them gleamed a second carriage. "Your Grace!" The lead figure rushed forward. "Thank God we found you. When we saw the wreckage, we feared the worst." "Your Grace." The words echoed in the sudden silence. Tamsin turned slowly to look at the stranger she'd been nursing, the stranger whose coat she'd opened, whose wound she'd cleaned, whose body she'd pressed against hers through the mud. He met her eyes, and in his expression, she saw confirmation of the disaster she'd stumbled into. "Miss Allerdale," he said quietly, "allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Corvin Maddox, Duke of Ashworth." A duke. She had been carrying a duke through the mud like a sack of grain. She had torn her petticoat to bandage a duke's head. She had lectured a duke about staying still. She was going to be sick. "Your Grace." One of the newcomers pushed past her, his weathered face creased with concern. "Are you injured? Should we send for a physician?" Bruised ribs and a cut, nothing more. The Duke rose with only a slight grimace. "Thanks to Miss Allerdale's intervention. She found me in the wreckage and brought me here." Now the newcomers looked at her. 3 men in livery, but behind them, more figures emerged from the carriage. Figures in silk and velvet, picking their way through the mud with obvious distaste. "Corvin!" A woman's voice, sharp with worry. "What happened?" She burst into the mill house like a whirlwind of lavender silk and blonde curls, her pretty face pale with genuine fear. Behind her came another woman, older, draped in dark purple, her silver hair perfectly arranged, and behind her, Tamsin's stomach lurched. Lady Venetia Harcourt, daughter of the Earl of Pemberton. The most beautiful, most viciously ambitious debutante of the last 3 seasons. "I'm perfectly fine, Rowena." The Duke addressed the younger woman, his sister. "The horses bolted during the lightning. Miss Allerdale happened upon the accident and found shelter." "Miss Allerdale." The older woman's voice was cool as winter marble. "How fortunate that you were wandering the roads alone in a storm, and how intimate your rescue appears to have been." Heat flooded Tamsin's face. She looked down at herself and saw the disaster through their eyes. Her hair hung in wet ropes. Her dress was soaked through and clinging. Strips of her petticoat were clutched in her hand, the rest wrapped around the Duke's head. And she was alone with him. Had been alone with him for at least an hour. "Grandmother," the Duke said warningly, "Miss Allerdale saved my life. Gratitude might be appropriate." "Gratitude for a scandal?" The Dowager raised one silver eyebrow. "In 3 counties, word has already spread that your carriage overturned. By morning, they'll know you spent the night sheltering with an unknown woman." "That's not." Tamsin found her voice. "I simply helped an injured man. There was nothing improper." "Nothing improper." Lady Venetia's smile was delicate as poison. "You're alone with a gentleman, unchaperoned, your clothing in disarray. Even if nothing happened, do you think anyone will believe it?" Tamsin had no answer, because Venetia was right. Intent didn't matter. Truth didn't matter. Only perception. "We should return to Ashworth Hall," the Dowager said crisply. The girl can find her way to wherever she was going. No. The single word from the Duke stopped everyone. Miss Allerdale will accompany us to Ashworth Hall as my guest. Corvin. The Dowager's voice could have frozen fire. You cannot be serious. She saved my life. The least we can offer is hospitality until proper transportation can be arranged. He turned to Tamsin. Where were you traveling? Hartwell Village. I have a position waiting. As a governess. A governess. Lady Venetia's tone made it sound like something scraped from a boot. The Ashworth carriage will convey you to Hartwell tomorrow, the Duke continued. But tonight, you'll accept our hospitality. I insist. It wasn't a request. Tamsin understood that. But she had no alternative. Thank you, Your Grace. Rowena appeared at her elbow, radiating warmth. You must be frozen. Come, the carriage has blankets. She was guided into a carriage more luxurious than any she'd seen. The Duke sat across from her, his grandmother beside him. Lady Venetia arranged herself with studied grace. Rowena squeezed in beside Tamsin, pressing a blanket into her hands with a conspiratorial smile. Pay no attention to them, she whispered. I think you're wonderfully brave. The Dowager's voice cut through. Miss Allerdale, tell me about your family. My father was Horace Allerdale, Tamsin said carefully. A gentleman of Dorset. He passed 3 years ago. My mother maintains our family home with my younger brother, Giles. Allerdale. The Dowager turned the name over. I'm not familiar with it. We are not a prominent family, Your Grace. We never moved in exalted circles. And yet, here you are. In one of the most exalted circles imaginable, through the most convenient accident. The Dowager's eyes bored into hers. One might almost call it suspicious timing. The accusation was clear. The Dowager thought she'd engineered this. With respect, Your Grace, Tamsin said, her voice steady despite fury building in her chest. I had no way of knowing the Duke would be on that road. I had no way of causing his accident. And I would much rather have arrived at my position dry and respectable than be sitting here being accused of fortune hunting by a woman I have never wronged. Silence fell like a hammer blow. Venetia's fan fluttered. Rowena sucked in a breath. The Dowager's face shifted between outrage and something that might have been respect. And the Duke made a sound that might have been suppressed laughter. Well, the Dowager said finally, you have a tongue in your head. I suppose that's something. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but Tamsin felt eyes on her throughout. The Dowager's calculating, Venetia's hostile, Rowena's delighted, and the Duke's watching her with an intensity that made her wonder exactly what she'd gotten herself into. Ashworth Hall emerged from the darkness like a stone giant rising from the earth. Hundreds of windows blazed with candlelight, illuminating imposing columns and ancient grandeur. Servants appeared instantly as the carriage stopped. Tamsin stepped into a world that didn't belong to her. The entrance hall alone was larger than her family's entire house. Marble floors gleamed. Portraits of stern ancestors watched from gilded frames. Mrs. Pembury, the Duke addressed the housekeeper. Please prepare the rose suite for Miss Allerdale. She'll require dry clothing, a hot bath, and supper in her room. Of course, Your Grace. And Mrs. Pembury, she is to be treated as an honored guest. The housekeeper's expression didn't flicker. Understood, Your Grace. Tamsin was ushered up sweeping stairs, down corridors hung with tapestries, and finally into a suite that stopped her breath. Pale pink silk lined the walls, delicate furniture filled the space, and through an open doorway she glimpsed a 4-poster bed. Your bath will be ready shortly, miss. A young maid with copper hair curtsied. I'm Nell. My stay. Tamsin laughed weakly. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. Nell's expression suggested she knew more than she was saying. The water was scented with roses. The soap was French. Tamsin sank into the bath and tried to organize her chaotic thoughts. A knock interrupted her spiraling. "Miss? Her Grace the Dowager requests your presence in the library, immediately." So much for tomorrow. Tamsin dressed quickly and followed Nell to the library. It was a magnificent room, walls lined with leather-bound volumes, fire crackling in the hearth. The Dowager sat in a high-backed chair like a queen on her throne. She was alone. "Sit," the Dowager gestured. "We need to speak plainly, without my grandson's idealistic interference." Tamsin sat, back straight, hands folded. "You're not what I expected," the Dowager began. "When I saw you in that mill house, I assumed the worst. A schemer, an opportunist. I have no designs on anyone's title, Your Grace." "So you've said. And yet here you are." The Dowager's gaze sharpened. "Having spent unchaperoned hours with my grandson in circumstances that would require marriage if they became public knowledge." "They won't become public. I'll leave tomorrow, and none of this will be spoken of again." The Dowager laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You naive child. Do you think the servants won't gossip? By week's end, your name will be synonymous with scandal. Then I'll find a position where my name isn't known." "Running away?" The Dowager shook her head. "The option of a coward. I am not a coward." "Then prove it." The Dowager leaned forward. "I have a proposition. One that could save your reputation and serve my purposes." Every instinct screamed warning. But Tamsin was trapped. "Lady Venetia Harcourt has been pursuing my grandson for 2 seasons. Her family expects an engagement. Corvin despises her, but he's too honorable to embarrass her publicly, and I've been pressuring him because she's suitable on paper. Why pressure him toward a match he despises? Because I want him to fight back." The Dowager's voice carried unexpected heat. "My grandson has been a ghost since his father died 18 months ago. He performs his duties flawlessly and feels absolutely nothing. He's chosen numbness over grief." Tamsin thought of the Duke's eyes in the mill house, the unexpected warmth when he'd said she had gentle hands. "What does this have to do with me?" "Tonight, you stirred something in him. When he defended you, he was more present than I've seen him in months." The Dowager's gaze sharpened. "I want you to stay. Play the role of a prospective match, distract him from Venetia, and perhaps remind him what it feels like to be alive. You want me to pretend to court your grandson? I want you to be a disruption. In exchange, I'll ensure your reputation remains intact. I'll introduce you as an old family friend's daughter, and when the pretense ends, provide references that will open any door." It was madness, but the alternative was ruin. Why would the Duke agree? "I'll present it as my idea to deflect Venetia. He needn't know about my other motivations." 3 conditions, Tamsin heard herself say. The Dowager's eyebrow rose. "You're negotiating." "First, my family is informed that I've accepted a position as Lady Rowena's companion. Nothing about courtships or schemes." "Agreed." "Second, when this ends, I want letters of introduction to noble households seeking governesses. Real references." "Agreed." "Third, if at any point this threatens real harm to my reputation or family, I leave immediately. No arguments." Silence stretched. Silence. Then the Dowager extended her hand. "You have spine. Very well. We have an agreement." Tamsin took her hand. The grip was firm, binding. "Welcome to Ashworth Hall," the Dowager said. "I hope you survive it." The door opened, and the Duke entered. He stopped when he saw them. "What's going on here?" "I've hired Miss Allerdale as Rowena's companion for the season," the Dowager said smoothly. "Since the scandal will follow her regardless, we might as well control the narrative." The Duke's eyes found Tamsin's. "Is this what you want?" It's a generous offer. Better than I could have hoped. Disaster. He repeated her earlier words slowly. Is that what you call saving my life? I call it an accident that became complicated. Something crossed his gray eyes. Then let's hope the complications prove worthwhile. He left, and Tamsin released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Well, the Dowager said dryly, that went better than expected. Tamsin wasn't sure she agreed, because as she watched the Dukes retreating back, she felt certain she'd stepped into a current far stronger than she could swim against. And the shore was already disappearing. Morning arrived with birdsong and pale sunlight streaming through rose-colored curtains. For a disorienting moment, Tamsin didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too fine. Then memory crashed back. The storm, the Duke, the bargain. She sat up slowly, taking in the rose suite. Every detail spoke of wealth accumulated over generations. Good morning, miss. Nell bustled in with a tray. Lady Rowena is desperate to see you. She had no time to respond before Rowena burst through the door. You're awake! Finally! She threw herself onto the bed. Grandmother says you're staying for the season, which is wonderful, because I desperately need a friend who isn't trying to marry my brother. Rowena. Just Rowena. We're companions now, practically sisters. She grabbed Tamsin's hands. Now tell me everything. How did you really meet Corvin? It's the truth. I found the overturned carriage. He was injured. I helped. Just like that? He was bleeding. What was I supposed to do? Rowena's smile widened. I like you. She leaned closer. Corvin hasn't stopped asking after you, you know. He asked Mrs. Pembury 3 times if you'd been made comfortable. That's practically a declaration from him these days. Heat crept into Tamsin's cheeks. He's just grateful. He's different around you. Present. Rowena's expression softened. Please don't break his heart. She had no time to answer before a small army arrived. 3 maids bearing fabric, followed by a tiny woman with pins bristling from her wrist. Miss Allerdale, I am Madame Fournier. Her Grace has commissioned a wardrobe. We begin immediately. The next 2 hours were a blur of measuring and pinning, debates about colors. The sage green for day wear, Madame Fournier declared. The midnight blue for evening. And this, she held up fabric that shimmered copper and gold. This for the Ashworth ball. There's a ball? In 12 days, Rowena clapped. The perfect opportunity to introduce you properly. Society. Dancing with lords. Pretending to belong in a world that would destroy her if it discovered the truth. You look pale. Rowena dismissed everyone, then guided Tamsin to a chair. Too much? I don't understand what I'm doing here. Neither does anyone else. Society is just people pretending and judging everyone else. Rowena squeezed her hand. Confidence is mostly performance. If you act like you belong, people believe it. What if the performance fails? Then you perform harder. You won't be alone. I'll be beside you, and Corvin will be watching out for you whether he admits it or not. The tour revealed Ashworth Hall to be magnificent. A gallery of portraits, a music room with a pianoforte that had belonged to royalty, a conservatory filled with flowers. They ended in the library, and Tamsin's breath caught. I thought you might like this, Rowena said. Corvin practically lives here. Tamsin moved along the shelves, fingers trailing across leather spines. Books she'd only dreamed of reading. Borrow anything you like, a voice said from behind her. She turned to find the Duke watching her. He looked better today, the bandage replaced with a smaller plaster. Your Grace, my sister has been monopolizing you. She's been kind. She's been curious. But his tone held affection. How are you finding Ashworth Hall? Overwhelming. Beautiful. Outside my experience. Honest, as always. He moved to stand beside her. I wanted to thank you again. My grandmother's version was sanitized. She had reasons. She always does. A muscle flexed in his jaw. I hope she hasn't pressured you into staying. I have my own reasons, practical ones, which are, my prospects were limited. Now I have an opportunity, references, a chance at something better. His brow furrowed. You speak very pragmatically. Pragmatism is a luxury of the poor, Your Grace. We deal with what is, not what might be. And happiness? Happiness is a byproduct, not a goal. That's bleak. It's realistic. They stood in silence. Tamsin was acutely aware of how close he was. The ball is in 12 days, he said. You'll be presented. Questions will be asked. I understand. Do you? You'll be scrutinized, possibly attacked. The ton is not kind to outsiders. I'm not reaching for anything. I'm surviving. His eyes held hers. Then we'll make sure you survive spectacularly. The library door opened, and Lady Venetia swept in. Your Grace, I've been searching everywhere. Her gaze landed on Tamsin. Oh, Miss Allerdale. Still here, I see. Lady Venetia moved through the library like she owned it. I thought we might take a turn in the gardens, Your Grace. She positioned herself between the Duke and Tamsin. The air is so refreshing after rain. Perhaps later. Miss Allerdale and I were discussing the collection. How charming. Venetia's eyes hardened. Miss Allerdale must find it educational. Coming from modest circumstances, she's probably never seen so many books. The insult was delicate, wrapped in silk. Instead of retreating, Tamsin lifted her chin. On the contrary, my father believed education was the greatest inheritance. Our library may have been smaller, but I've read extensively in philosophy, literature, and sciences. Self-educated? Venetia made it sound like disease. How industrious. How necessary. When one cannot afford tutors, one learns to teach oneself. The Duke suppressed what might have been amusement. Venetia's eyes flashed. Well, your industry will serve you well as a governess. She turned to the Duke. It's generous of your family to offer shelter to those less fortunate. Miss Allerdale isn't charity. The Duke's voice carried warning. She's a guest. Of course. A guest who arrived unchaperoned, wearing your bandages. Venetia smiled. I'm sure the distinction will be clear at the ball. Lady Venetia, Tamsin kept her voice steady. My presence here threatens nothing that matters to you. You presume to know what matters to me. I observe. You want the Duke. I want employment. Our goals don't conflict. The bluntness caught Venetia off guard. You're very bold for a governess. I'm not a governess yet, and boldness is sometimes the only currency available. The Duke stepped forward. Ladies, Lady Venetia, I believe my grandmother was asking for you. Seating arrangements. It was a dismissal. Venetia curtsied stiffly and swept out. You've made an enemy, the Duke said quietly. I had one already. I've simply made her intentions clear. She can be dangerous. The Pembertons have connections throughout society. Her cousin Lord Fenwick alone could close a dozen doors with a single word. Then I'll find other doors. I've survived worse than social ostracism. Something in his face shifted, a crack in the careful mask. You don't ask for pity. Pity doesn't pay bills. And yet, here you are, accepting help. Accepting opportunity. There's a difference. She moved toward the door. I'm not here to trap you. When this ends, I'll leave with my references and trouble you no further. And if I don't want you to leave? The question hung between them. Tamsin's pulse stuttered. Then that would be a complication neither of us can afford, she said softly. Good afternoon, Your Grace. She left before he could respond. The afternoon brought new challenges. Tea with the Dowager, where Tamsin was grilled on everything, a dancing lesson where Rowena insisted her waltz needed work, a fitting requiring 2 hours of standing still. Dinner was formal, served in a dining room that could house an army. The Dowager presided. Lady Venetia and her mother, the Countess of Pemberton, occupied places of honor. "Miss Allerdale," the Countess said, "Lady Venetia tells me you're to be presented at the ball. How exciting." "Yes, my lady." Though one wonders how much preparation can accomplish in 12 days. Some things cannot be taught. Breeding, for instance. Tamsin set down her fork. "You're quite right. Breeding cannot be taught. Neither can it be purchased or performed." The Countess reddened. "Miss Allerdale's breeding is perfectly acceptable," the Dowager interjected. "The Allerdale family has been gentry for 3 generations. Respectable. Venetia's smile was poisonous. Such a useful word. "As does ambitious," Tamsin replied. "Or desperate. Words can be flexible." Rowena choked on her wine. "You overstep, Miss Allerdale." "I defend myself. There's a difference." "Enough." The Duke's voice cut through. "This is a dinner table, not a battlefield. Lady Venetia, Miss Allerdale is my guest. I expect courtesy." "Of course, Your Grace." The meal passed in strained civility, but when Tamsin escaped to her room, her hands were shaking. She'd survived, but Venetia would not forget. The days settled into unexpected rhythm. Mornings with Rowena, learning intricate dances. Afternoons with the Dowager, memorizing names and relationships. Evenings navigating dinners, where Venetia watched for weakness. And the Duke watched her. He didn't stare. Nothing obvious. But she felt his attention like heat from a fire. When she spoke, his eyes followed. When she laughed, his features softened. "He's different around you," Rowena observed on the 5th day. "Looser, more present." "I'm not sure what you mean." "He actually smiled yesterday. A real smile. I nearly fell off my chair." Tamsin turned away. "The Duke is courteous to all guests." "The Duke maintains careful distance from everyone. With you, he forgets." She had no time to answer before the door opened, and the Duke appeared. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all." Rowena bounced up. "I was just leaving. Very important correspondence." She vanished, leaving them alone. "My sister has all the subtlety of a charging horse," he said dryly. "She means well. She means to meddle." But affection colored his exasperation. "She thinks I need saving." "Do you?" The question surprised both of them. He moved to the window. "My father died 18 months ago. A fever that should have been survivable. I was in Yorkshire handling a tenant dispute. By the time the message reached me, he'd been dead for 3 days." Tamsin's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. It doesn't change that I wasn't there. That his last words went to servants because his son was too busy being dutiful to be present." His voice was flat. "After the funeral, my grandmother began her campaign for me to marry, as if duty could fill the hollow where grief should be." "You're not hollow," he turned. "How would you know?" "Because hollow people don't rescue strangers from accidents. They don't insist those strangers be treated as honored guests." She drew nearer, pulled despite herself. "You're not hollow. You're exhausted." Pain flickered in his eyes. "When my father lost his investments," Tamsin said quietly, "I watched him disappear. He was there physically, but everything that made him my father drained away. He blamed himself. Was it his fault? Partly. He trusted someone he shouldn't have. But the guilt he carries is out of proportion. He punishes himself for a mistake made years ago. You're suggesting I'm letting mine become permanent? I'm suggesting you have a choice." Silence stretched between them. She was acutely aware of how close they stood. Tell me something about yourself, he said suddenly. Something no one here knows. That's not fair exchange. Consider it investment. I'm hoping for return. She shouldn't. Every instinct screamed that intimacy was dangerous, but he looked at her like she was real. I write poetry, she heard herself say. Terrible poetry. Romantic verses that would make critics despair. But I can't stop. When everything else has been taken away, making something beautiful still feels like rebellion. His face changed, something warming behind his eyes. That's admirable. It's impractical. Not everything has to be practical. He closed the distance between them. Some things are worthwhile simply because they make us feel alive. That's easy for someone with a fortune to say. Perhaps, but it doesn't make it less true. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek without touching. You make me want to feel alive. I'm not sure what to do with that. Tamsin. The word slipped out. If we're exchanging truths, you should use my name. Tamsin? He savored the syllables. And you should call me Corvin when we're alone. We shouldn't be alone. Probably not. But neither moved away. The door burst open. Rowena appeared, breathless. There's a visitor. For Miss Allerdale. He claims to be her brother. Tamsin's gut clenched. What? A young man, quite insistent. Giles Allerdale. He's come to take you home. She was running before she could think, down corridors and stairs. She burst into the entrance hall to find Giles arguing with the butler. Giles, she grabbed his arm. What are you doing here? Thank God. He pulled her into an embrace. When your letter didn't arrive, Mother assumed the worst. Then we heard rumors about a scandal involving a duke. What letter? Confusion crossed his face. The letter explaining your position. It never arrived. Cold dread pooled in Tamsin's stomach. The dowager had promised to send word. Her mother thought she was ruined. Or dead. There's been a misunderstanding, she said quickly. I've secured a position as Lady Rowena's companion. Everything is fine. Fine? Giles's voice rose. The whole county is talking about how you spent the night alone with the Duke. How is that fine? The entrance hall had gone quiet. Servants watched. Rowena stood pale on the stairs, and behind her, the Duke emerged from shadows. Giles, Tamsin said through gritted teeth, we should discuss this privately. Discuss what? Your ruined reputation. Mother has been weeping for 3 days. Every word was a nail in her coffin. That's quite enough. The Duke's voice cut through, cold and commanding. Mr. Allerdale, I presume? Giles flushed. Your Grace. Your sister is a valued guest. Nothing improper has occurred. However, you're welcome to stay while Miss Allerdale prepares for the Ashworth ball, where her position will be made clear. Giles looked between them. And what exactly is her position? The question hung in the air. Miss Allerdale, the Duke said slowly, is under my protection. That should be sufficient. Under my protection. The words carried weight far beyond their surface meaning. Tamsin saw understanding dawn on her brother's face, saw hope transform his expression, and she felt the trap close tighter, lined with silk, but a trap nonetheless. This was no longer simple. Whatever happened next, there would be no easy escape for either of them. The night of the ball arrived with terrifying speed. Tamsin stood before the mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. The copper-gold gown was a masterpiece, catching candlelight like captured flame. Nell had worked magic with her hair, weaving in tiny pearls. A borrowed necklace of amber and gold circled her throat. You look like a painting, Rowena breathed from the doorway. One where the woman is secretly planning to conquer kingdoms. I feel sick. That's normal. Rowena swept in, resplendent in silvery blue. Just remember, you belong here. The past week had been a whirlwind. Giles had been installed in a guest room, subjected to the Dowager's hospitality. Meanwhile, the Duke had been present, at meals, during dancing lessons, in the library when she retreated for solitude, always watching, always nearby. Venetia had noticed. Her barbs grew sharper. But tonight, none of that mattered. "Ready?" Rowena offered her arm. "No, but let's go." The ballroom was a sea of candlelight and color, hundreds of guests in their finest. Tamsin descended the grand staircase with Rowena on one side, the Dowager on the other, feeling every eye turn toward them. Whispers started immediately. The scandal. Alone with him. Nobody knows where she came from. They reached the bottom and the Duke was there, waiting. He wore formal evening dress that made him look severe and impossibly handsome. His gaze swept over her, once before settling somewhere over her left shoulder. "Miss Allerdale." He bowed over her hand, and the touch of his lips against her gloved knuckles sent electricity racing up her arm. "You look extraordinary." "Your Grace is too kind." "I'm rarely kind. I'm merely honest." He straightened, still holding her hand. "May I have the first dance?" The whispers exploded. The first dance was significant. Lords and ladies craned their necks. Venetia's face turned white. "The honor would be mine." He led her onto the floor as the orchestra struck up a waltz. His hand settled at her waist. They began to move. "Everyone is staring," she murmured. "Let them. At least now they're seeing what I want them to see." "What's that?" His eyes held hers. "That you're not a scandal. You're a choice." The words hit like a physical blow. She stumbled slightly, and his arm tightened, keeping her steady. "Corvin, don't." His voice was soft. "Don't tell me this is complicated or impossible. I know. I've been telling myself for days. It hasn't changed anything. It should. Why? Because society disapproves?" He spun her. "I've spent 18 months following rules, being the perfect Duke. It's made me dead inside. Then you appeared, and suddenly I want to be alive again." Tears pricked at her eyes. "You don't know me. Not really." "I know enough. I know you're brave and honest. I know you see me as a person, not a title. I know that when you're near, I forget to perform and just exist." His thumb traced a small circle against her waist. "I want more time to know the rest." The waltz was ending. The watching crowd waited. "After the ball," she whispered, "we should talk. Properly. The garden. There's a folly near the lake. Meet me when supper is announced." It was dangerous, improper. She nodded. The music ended. He released her with formal precision, bowing as if nothing had passed between them. The hours that followed blurred. She danced with lords whose names she forgot, navigated Venetia's attempts to monopolize the Duke. Through it all, she felt his gaze following her. When the supper announcement came, she slipped away. The garden was silver and shadow. She found the folly without difficulty, a small stone structure overlooking a gleaming lake. The Duke was already there. "You came." "I said I would." He moved toward her, and she met him halfway. For a moment, they simply existed in the same space without pretense. "I should tell you something," he said, "before this goes further." "What?" "My grandmother's arrangement. It wasn't just about giving you a position." His expression hardened. "She told me she arranged for you to stay because she thought you might distract me. From grief, from Venetia. She's been using you." Cold washed through her. He knew. "I know," she whispered. "She told me the same." His face changed. "And you agreed?" "I agreed to an arrangement that would benefit me. What she wanted from you was her business. So we've both been pawns." "Yes." She held his gaze. "Does it matter? What's happened between us isn't manufactured." What do you feel?" The question hung between them, vast and terrifying. "I feel like I've been surviving so long I forgot what living felt like," she whispered. "I feel like you see me. I feel like I'm falling." He closed the distance. His hands cupped her face. "Then fall with me." And he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. His mouth claimed hers with intensity that weakened her knees. Her hands fisted in his lapels, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, the world had shifted. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Yes." His forehead pressed against hers. "I'm counting on it." A sound from the path made them spring apart. Footsteps. Voices. Through the Follies windows, she saw Venetia appear with her mother. "She must be dealt with," the Countess was saying, "before Ashworth does something irreversible." "I have a plan." Venetia's voice was cold. "By morning, Miss Allerdale will be exposed. I've sent word to my cousin, Lord Fenwick, about her brother's debts. When society learns she's from a family of debtors and schemers, not even the Dowager's protection will save her." Tamsin's gut turned to ice. "And if Ashworth still refuses you?" "He won't. Once she's ruined, he'll return to respectability. To me." They moved on. Tamsin stood frozen. "Tamsin." Corvin turned her to face him. "Listen." "She's right." Her voice cracked. "Giles does owe money. Everywhere. If Lord Fenwick investigates, he'll find every shameful detail. I don't care about your brother's debts. Society will. Then we face it together. That's the only promise I need tonight." She should refuse, should protect him from the scandal. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw hope. The first hope she'd seen since they'd met. "Together," she whispered, and prayed it would be enough. Dawn broke with deceptive gentleness. Tamsin hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Venetia's voice predicting her destruction. The knock came at 9. Nell's face was pale. "Miss, the Dowager requests your presence. Immediately." She hesitated. "There's been talk." So it began. The morning room door was closed. Voices within, sharp and agitated. When she entered, every conversation stopped. The Dowager sat in her chair, face carved from ice. Venetia and her mother occupied the settee, barely concealing triumph. Rowena stood by the window, tears streaming. Giles slumped in a corner, devastated. And the Duke stood by the fireplace, expression unreadable. Miss Allerdale. The Dowager's voice could have frozen flame. "Perhaps you'd explain this." She held up a letter. Even from across the room, Tamsin recognized the handwriting. Felix Drummond, her brother's former business partner. "I don't know what that contains." "Allow me to enlighten you." The Dowager's tone was surgical. "It's a detailed account of your brother's debts, nearly £800. It alleges he attempted to defraud a shipping company. And it suggests your presence in the Duke's path was not accidental, but a scheme to trap him." The room spun. That's a lie. Giles had nothing to do with the accident. A position that conveniently evaporated upon investigation, Venetia cut in. "My cousin Lord Fenwick sent inquiries. The family in Hartwell never arranged for a governess." "What?" Tamsin turned to her brother. "Giles?" His face crumpled. "Tamsin, I can explain. You told me you'd arranged it. I wrote the letter. I forged it." The words came broken. "I owed money to bad men. I thought if you could get away. You sent me onto a strange road with no destination. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were supposed to reach Hartwell, and I'd send money. But Felix saw an opportunity." "What opportunity?" Giles's silence was answer enough. "He wanted you to compromise the Duke," Venetia said. "Your brother's partner sabotaged the carriage. A Duke's fortune would clear his debts nicely." "No." Tamsin shook her head. "I didn't know. I found the wreck by chance." How convenient. The Countess smiled. The perfect defense. Ignorance. Tamsin turned to Corvin, desperate. You have to believe me. His expression was stone. The carriage, he said slowly. It was sabotaged? Apparently, the Dowager replied. Lord Fenwick found evidence. Silence fell. Tamsin felt judgment pressing down. I didn't know, she whispered. Corvin, please. Your Grace, Venetia corrected sharply. Enough, Venetia. The Dowager's voice cracked like a whip, but the damage was done. Whatever had grown between them was poisoned now. I'll leave, Tamsin said. Today. That would be best. She turned to go, then paused. I know the evidence damns me. But what I felt here was real. The gratitude. The hope. Her eyes found Corvin's. Everything was real. She didn't wait for a response. The walk to the Rose Suite was the longest of her life. Nell helped her pack in tearful silence. The carriage was waiting. She climbed in without looking back, and left Ashworth Hall behind. 3 days passed, like wounds that wouldn't heal. 3 days of her mother's silent tears, her father's resigned sighs, Giles's useless apologies. Tamsin moved through her family's modest home like a ghost. On the 4th day, a carriage appeared. She was in the garden when she heard wheels on gravel. She didn't look up, assuming another creditor. Miss Allerdale? She knew that voice. Rowena stood at the garden gate, traveling dress rumpled. Behind her, the Dowager emerged from the carriage. We need to speak with you, Rowena said. Please. I have nothing to say to your family. Not everything. The Dowager approached with her usual bearing, but something was different. Softer. May we come inside? Against her better judgment, Tamsin led them to the parlor. Her mother attempted hospitality before being asked for privacy. Why are you here? Because my grandson is an idiot, the Dowager said bluntly, and because I owe you an apology. Of all things Tamsin expected, that wasn't among them. I believed Venetia's accusations too readily. I was angry my plans had been exposed. After you left, I conducted my own investigation. Felix Drummond was arrested 2 days ago. He confessed everything. Tamsin's heart stopped. Everything? He sabotaged the carriage. Your brother's involvement was peripheral. Giles knew nothing of the sabotage. He genuinely believed he was sending you to a position. The Dowager's expression tightened. Your brother is a fool, but not a villain. He was trying to protect you from creditors. And the forged letter? Desperation. Not malice. Felix saw opportunity in Giles's scheme and twisted it. The room seemed to tilt. Corvin knows. He's been insufferable since you left. Rowena's voice was fierce. Won't eat. Won't sleep. Locked himself in the library. He believed Venetia. He was in shock. Someone had tried to harm him, and the accusation came attached to the woman he'd started to love. Rowena's eyes glistened. It wasn't fair, but it was human. Love, the word echoed. Lady Venetia? Asked to leave permanently, the Dowager said with grim satisfaction. Silence fell. Tamsin tried to process everything. Why tell me this? To give you a choice. The Dowager leaned forward. Accept this news and move forward. I'll clear your name. Letters to every family of consequence. You'll have the references I promised. Or, return to Ashworth Hall. Face my grandson. Decide together what happens next. Tamsin thought of the kiss in the folly, the promise to face everything together. He let me go, she said quietly. He was wrong. He knows that now. The question is whether you can forgive him. Forgiveness. Such a heavy word. My family. Giles's debts. Settled. The Dowager's tone was matter-of-fact. Corvin insisted, anonymously. Your brother's been offered a position in Yorkshire. Honest work. Tamsin stared. After believing I'd conspired against him, He did that the morning after you left, before he knew the truth. He said even if you'd betrayed him, your family shouldn't suffer. He said you deserved a chance at the future you'd worked for. Tears spilled before she could stop them. All this time, she'd imagined him hardened against her. Instead, he'd been fighting for her while believing the worst. "I need time," she whispered. "Take all you need. The carriage will wait. If you return with us, we leave within the hour." They left her alone. Her mother appeared in the doorway. "Tamsin? Who were those women?" "A choice," Tamsin said slowly. "They came to offer me a choice." "What kind?" "The kind that terrifies me. The kind I want anyway." Her mother smiled. "Then you already have your answer." Yes, she supposed she did. Ashworth Hall looked different in afternoon light, stone glowing amber. Tamsin descended from the carriage with her heart in her throat. "He's in the library," Rowena whispered. "Hasn't left since you went away." Tamsin climbed familiar stairs, walked familiar corridors, stopped before the familiar door. Her hand trembled as she knocked. No answer. She knocked again. "Corvin, it's Tamsin. Please let me in." Silence. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. "You shouldn't be here. And yet I am." "Open the door." A long pause. Then the key turned, and the door swung open. He looked terrible. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, clothes rumpled. But when he saw her, something in his expression cracked open. "Tamsin." She pushed past him into the library. Books pulled from shelves, papers scattered, a half-empty brandy bottle. "Your grandmother told me everything," she said. "Felix's confession. The truth. The truth is I failed you." His voice was hoarse. "I let them accuse you. I believed them. You were in shock. That's no excuse." "No. But it's human." She moved toward him. "I spent 3 days hating you, wondering how I could have been so foolish as to believe someone like you could want someone like me." He flinched. "Then your grandmother appeared with the truth, and I realized something. I didn't hate you because you'd hurt me. I hated you because I'd given you power to hurt me. Because what I feel is so vast and terrifying that losing it was worse than the loss itself. What you feel. I love you." The words came fierce and certain. "I love your grief and your duty, and your stubborn refusal to feel anything. I love the way you look at me like I'm real. I love that you paid my brother's debts, even when you believed I'd betrayed you." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you, and I'm furious about it." He crossed the distance in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, trembling. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. No, but I'm offering it anyway. The question is whether you can forgive yourself." His forehead dropped against hers. "I've been destroying myself with regret. Every moment since you left, imagining what I should have said. I should have defended you. I should have thrown Venetia out. Stop. We can't live in should have. Only what happens next. What happens next? That depends on what you want. I want you." The words were immediate. "Not as an arrangement or a solution. I want you as everything. As my partner. My equal. My wife, if you'll have me." The world stopped. "Corvin, I know I'm asking too much. I know your trust is shattered, but I can't pretend what I feel is anything less than complete." His thumbs traced her cheekbones. "I love you, Tamsin Allerdale. I love your honesty and courage and your poetry. My poetry isn't terrible. I love that you think that." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Say yes, please." She looked at this man who had been her stranger, her antagonist, her hope, her heartbreak. She thought of all the reasons to refuse. Then she thought of the kiss in the folly, the promise to face everything together. "Yes," she whispered. His kiss was everything the first had been, and more. Relief and joy and desperate need. She clung to him and let herself fall. When they broke apart, the door burst open. Rowena and the Dowager stood in the corridor. "I assume this means we should prepare for a wedding?" the Dowager said dryly. "Yes," Corvin pulled Tamsin closer. "As soon as possible." Rowena squealed and threw herself at them both, and the Dowager allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The wedding was the scandal of the season, not because of whispered rumors, but because it defied every expectation. The bride wore amber silk that caught candlelight like flame. The groom stood at the altar with such naked joy that even cynics fell silent. But the true declaration came at the wedding breakfast, before 500 guests. Corvin rose, and the crowd fell silent. "Most of you came expecting usual formalities. I'm going to disappoint you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. 6 weeks ago, my carriage overturned. I was injured, likely dying. A woman I'd never met found me. She didn't know who I was. She simply saw a person in need and chose to help. He turned to look at Tamsin. She dragged me through mud to shelter. She tore her clothing to bandage my wounds. And when society tried to destroy her for that compassion, she stood her ground with more dignity than any titled lady I've known. The murmurs grew. I was told she was unsuitable, not wealthy enough, not connected enough. I was told a duke should marry strategically, not emotionally. His voice hardened. I rejected that advice, because the woman who saved me showed more courage, more integrity, more genuine nobility than anyone born to a title, including myself. He lifted his glass. "To my wife, Tamsin Maddox, Duchess of Ashworth, who taught me that worth isn't measured in bloodlines, who reminded me that choosing love is the bravest thing any of us can do." Stunned silence. Then Rowena stood, glass raised, tears streaming. The Dowager followed. One by one, the entire room rose. Tamsin stood on trembling legs. Corvin crossed to her side. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I wanted everyone to know exactly who you are." She laughed, and he pulled her into a kiss entirely inappropriate for such a formal gathering. The crowd erupted in cheers. When midnight came and guests departed, Corvin led her to a quiet balcony. "Tired? Exhausted? Overwhelmed? This morning I was nobody. Tonight I'm a duchess. You were never nobody." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Now the rest of the world knows." They stood in comfortable silence. "What happens now?" Tamsin asked. "Now we live." His voice was soft but certain. Not performing duty or surviving scandal. Just living. Together. "I'd like that." She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And somewhere distant, the clock struck midnight, marking the end of one story and the beginning of another. 5 months later, spring had transformed the countryside into a tapestry of green and gold. Tamsin stood at the library window, watching blossoms drift like pink snow. So much had changed since that stormy night. She was a duchess now, equal partner to a man who still looked at her each morning as if he couldn't believe his luck. Venetia had married a baron of modest fortune, far from the glittering future she'd schemed for. Giles was thriving in Yorkshire. Their parents had moved to a comfortable cottage on the Ashworth estate, and Tamsin had found something she'd never dared dream. Home. "You're thinking deep thoughts," Corvin said, slipping an arm around her waist. "The crease between your eyebrows gives it away." "I'm remembering the night I found you, how frightened I was. You saved my life that night, in more ways than one. You saved mine, too." They stood in comfortable silence. Then Corvin withdrew a small, worn book. "I found something, tucked behind volumes my father collected." Tamsin took it carefully. A journal, bound in faded leather. She opened it to a marked page. The handwriting was elegant. but hurried. "Today I met the woman I'm going to marry," she read aloud. "I don't know her name yet, but when our eyes met, something shifted, something permanent. My mother will disapprove. Society will talk. I don't care. Some things are worth every obstacle. Love is worth it." Her voice faltered. "My father wrote that the night he met my mother." Corvin's eyes glistened. "I never knew he felt so certain." He was right. Tamsin closed the journal. Love was worth it. "Yes." He pulled her close. "I spent 18 months believing I had to earn happiness through duty, but it doesn't work that way. What does? Choosing someone, being chosen, facing everything together." She thought of that frightened woman on the muddy road. She'd never imagined the path that choice would open. "My father used to say, 'Character is revealed in crisis,'" she said softly. "I never understood until you." "Until what?" "Until I saw who you became when everything fell apart. You chose kindness even when you believed you'd been used. That's who you are." He kissed her then, deep and thorough. When they broke apart, she retrieved a small package. A gift. To commemorate. Inside was a miniature painting showing a country road in a storm, an overturned carriage, and a woman kneeling beside an injured man. "I wanted us to remember where we started," she explained. "That sometimes the worst day becomes the best thing that ever happened." His eyes grew bright. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." Outside, spring continued its slow unfurling, but inside the library, the Duke and Duchess of Ashworth remained wrapped in each other. The road that had brought them together was muddy and storm-torn, but standing here now, Tamsin wouldn't have changed a single step, because every step had led to this. And this was everything. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist, because you believe in love that chooses courage over convenience, in characters who fight for happiness despite the odds, in endings that feel earned and true. Your presence makes this space warm and welcoming. I'm grateful for every moment you spend with these characters. Do you have a favorite line or scene? Your engagement helps me understand what moves you, what keeps you listening, and what kinds of stories to create next. Consider subscribing if you'd like more romances with emotional depth and genuine character growth. Thank you for being here. You make this community what it is.